Resident Evil 4 Remake is a game that really surprised me. I enjoyed the game far more than I expected myself to, and it's become one of my favorite games of all time, period. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. So without further ado, let's just get straight into the review. So first, I figured I should talk about my background with the Resident Evil franchise as a whole. If you don't really care about my background with this series or just want to skip the gameplay and story elements, skip to this timestamp on the screen now. That being said, my experience with this franchise is pretty much non-existent. Sure, I'd heard about it a few times, but I was never really drawn to it because horror games just didn't really appeal to me that much. But then, one fateful day, I decided to try the demo for the Resident Evil 2 Remake, and my mind changed pretty much immediately. I loved how the game didn't rely on simple jump scares. Instead, the horror elements were from the atmosphere, vibe, and story of the game. But Resident Evil 2 overall just didn't really look like my type of game. But then when I saw the Resident Evil 4 Remake, its action-heavy gameplay appealed to me way more than Resident Evil 2 did. So then a few months later, I decided to pick it up, and I'm so glad I did. Now, I don't think Resident Evil 4 is a game that should be played for its story. Don't get me wrong, I don't think it's bad or anything. A lot of the characters and set pieces are really cool, and it leads to some really good emotional moments. However, I just don't think it's the focal point of the game. So the basic plot, without getting into too many spoilers, is as follows. You play as Leon, a government agent sent from Spain to recover the president's daughter, Ashley. You do meet some other people along the way, such as Ada, Luis, etc. The story does have a pretty campy tone, but that's something that was brought over from the original, and it wouldn't really make sense to make a remake of a game that was completely different story-wise, so I accept it. And honestly, in a world of super dark, gritty stories and gaming, the campiness can be pretty refreshing. Now, this might sound kind of weird, but the best way I can describe this game's story is probably like an 80s action-adventure zombie movie that was way ahead of its time. I think the game's story walks a pretty fine line of tension versus campiness, and that's really not easy to do, so I commend it for doing so. But it also doesn't shy away from really good emotional moments and dark parts of the story. So in conclusion, the story is no Last of Us, but it does hold the game together and it works well overall. And now I'm going to talk about what's in my opinion the very best part of this game, the gameplay. Now, I don't think the story of Resident Evil 4 is bad or anything, just the gameplay is on a whole nother level. In fact, this may be a hot take, but this is some of my favorite gameplay in a game, period, like of all time. It's that good. The gunplay is fast and responsive, and the animations are absolutely amazing. Especially when you shoot a zombie in the face and then roundhouse kick him above the head, it's something else, man. It's so cool. And the knife parry is absolutely amazing too. Like, at first I thought the knife parry was a little bit too easy, but it gets harder the more the game goes on, so I accept it. Plus the knife has a durability, which also makes up for it. I think this game and Sekiro are tied for my favorite parries of any game ever. It's just so satisfying. Boss fights in this game are also really good too. I like how there's a unique way of taking all the bosses on, and it's not just point and click, or they just don't have a health bar. You actually have to take them on in creative ways. Like, if I could describe this game in one word, I would say it's a roller coaster ride. It's a definition of all killer and no filler. You're constantly acquiring new abilities and gun upgrades, and it makes it so that the gameplay never really gets stale or boring. And the guns in this game are something else. They're amazing. From the early game guns to the Blacktail and Red 9 to the late game snipers, they're all amazing and feel really good to use. One thing that separates this game from other Resident Evil games is the abundance of ammo. There's not going to be a time in this game where you don't want to use your ammo or you have none to access. There's always going to be some ammo at your disposal. This game is much more action oriented than the other Resident Evil games. And while it does take away from the horror aspect, I think it definitely adds to the gameplay overall. Leon has the ability to handle pretty much all enemies that are thrown at you in this game. But it's not just the weapons that are amazing in this game. In this game, virtually everything in the environment is a weapon that can be used at your disposal. One of the best examples of this is a dog that you can help in the early game in Resident Evil 4, and if you do, it'll help you in a later boss fight. This isn't really something the developers had to add, but the inclusion of it makes the game all the better. You also have the part of the village scene where you can shoot a lamp to make fire rain down on the zombies below. There's also a good amount of desperation to the combat. Sure, Leon's well equipped, but he has to be creative in order to take down some of the enemies in this game, and it's really fun. I also really like the levels in this game. They're very well built, and they add good variety over the roughly 20-hour game. So overall, the gameplay in this game is absolutely phenomenal, and I highly recommend it simply off this alone. Alright, it's conclusion time. Do I recommend the Resident Evil 4 Remake? And the answer is a resounding yes. Even if you're not a fan of this series or the horror genre in general, I highly recommend you give the same game a chance because it's absolutely amazing overall. Alright guys, that's going to be it for me. I hope you enjoyed the video. I know I haven't uploaded in a long time. Sorry about that, but I'm going to upload more consistently from now on. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video. I will see you next time. Goodbye. Also, if you enjoyed this video, check out this one where I reviewed God of War in 2024.